If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That is the battle cry of a leader that has a headcount KPI, or that is the battle cry of a leader who's trying to grow a large team. I know, because I have been that leader. I like to follow that battle cry with a little chorus of one team, one dream, because I knew that if I was going to grow a large team, that how on earth do I keep these people all on the same point? That's the world we're in. All joking aside, in all seriousness, we are now in what I would consider a hiring frenzy. Tech is booming. In Northern Ireland, it's great if you are in tech and everything like that, but at the same time, as employers, we are struggling. It's trying to get people in the door. So I kind of want to counter that narrative and say, maybe large teams aren't the best way. And I say this affectionately, and having been in my career, someone who has decided to have purposely small teams. So what I'm suggesting is that actually it's not about going fast alone or going far together, actually that we can go fast and far together in small teams that are talent-rich, experts, and we work together. So that's what I want to chat about today, and sort of based on my experience. So this is me. The last 20 years of my life is pretty much summarized up here. I'm a software engineer. I've made web, e-com, apps, VR, you name it, I've been in it. I'm at the stage of my career now where I think code is risk. If I'm writing a line of code, that means I'm creating risk. So I don't want to write code anymore. I'm a CTO at heart, and I am still coding, and I still do sell a bit of IP in the healthcare space. But largely my career has been in business ventures. I've had a business since the year 2000, and about 12 years ago, I started my startup career. I started really going into high-tech startups, either doing that for local companies that are growing or as consultancy to bigger companies that they're spinning out. So I have this kind of software engineering background and business ventures background. My aim is to spin out ideas that should exist. I also have a PhD. PhD is in software architecture, and that really taught me that research doesn't have to be slow. Research can actually add pace to the world. That if we do the right amount of research, we can get enough evidence to go fast and far together. So that, to me, that's basically what this talk is about. Probably the last 15 years of experience, I've been gearing up to be a CTO of a tech company, but mostly in kind of the venture space. So what I really want to chat about is what has and what hasn't worked in the whole idea of creating new ventures and new products. If anyone's ever heard me talk before, you know that I rarely like to talk about what works, because it's very hard to learn from that. I love to talk about failure and what hasn't worked. So I'll mostly be looking at all the things that didn't work, and sort of my current thinking on team and process, and sort of that idea of considering when we are growing a team from nothing, how do we grow it in a respectful way so we can go fast and far together. I just want to say that the caveat is this is technology-based companies, tech teams, and tech teams for new products and new ventures. So that's kind of the context that we're setting this in. Little reminder, I call myself ventures. A lot of people in the audience might actually call someone like me a product person. I use the word ventures because, for me, product has often become about incremental change. Ventures is generally about something totally new. So I do love the product space, but I do prefer to be called ventures. And this is kind of like my public service announcement. I love product. I love people in the product space. And my kind of request of all tech companies out there, when you're creating product people, don't just take your BAs or your project managers or your marketing people or someone who's in a different role and put them in a product role and slap that title on them and expect them to be able to do it. Please don't. Because you wouldn't do that to a software engineer or a mechanical engineer, so don't do it to product either. Product is a really great experience and domain within the tech industry and sort of deserves that kind of respect. So this is my kind of, yay product, but please call me ventures. But this is kind of the context of what I'm talking about. So this is my ventures journey. There's been lots of successes, lots of happy times, lots of ups and downs. The timeline that I'm about to show you really does focus on the things that didn't work. So rest assured, I had a great time and there's lots of successes. And probably for commercial sensitivities and NDAs and stuff, I'm probably less likely to be able to talk about them. But this is kind of my last 15 years. But I really want to talk about when the pinch points happened. What happened when that process that we were trying to do and spin out companies and create the next billion-dollar unicorn, what kind of happened, what went wrong? My first startup, I loved it. Honestly, I start every team with the great hope that I will once again create the absolute amazing vibe that was in that team. Honestly, we were just naive and had no idea what we were doing. So we took lots of investment and completely lost control of the company. But the idea was that we were actually in the best position to actually steer our product. But the VC and the investment didn't think that way, and that's kind of where it all kind of, the wheels started to fall off. As an academic, I thought, right, I'll leave the uni that I was in that wasn't really geared for spin-outs, and I'll go to a university that's really gearing for spinning out tech companies and IP. But as an academic, I had to teach. I had to go and find £3 million for the next research project and all the other stuff, so I didn't actually have time to spin out IP, and it was just too slow. And all these cool tech companies were sort of stealing my lunch while I was writing some massive 80-page proposal. So again, pinch point really wasn't working. So I went it alone. Screwed a lot of you. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to bootstrap. Loved it. Best time of my life as well. I absolutely was amazing. I bootstrapped and got revenue really, really, really quickly. I got enough revenue to have a team, but I chose not to. I didn't realize at the time that this was probably a really good tactic. I decided to work with experts around the world, not just in Northern Ireland, not just the UK, Italy, America. I used my money to get really far with experts on a team of me. But death by admin, I was the pinch point. At the point of when we were growing, instead of really taking on another director or co-founder, I probably should have just taken on executive assistants and just offloaded all that admin crud and everything else. But really good experience. Success behind the scenes. I'm kind of happy with how that played out. Ended up in a big consultancy. Honestly, I loved it. Maybe they'll have me back one day. But it was a really great experience. I was working with mid-sized corporations, 20 to 200 million, looking to spin out something new. The problem I had there was I was tied to an engineering team. So I was saying, kill your ideas, don't do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. You don't need tech. Actually, you do. My team behind me, you need to sell £1 million worth of software. So again, that's kind of where the pinch point was in that process. Ended up in a boutique agency. One of the best teams I've ever worked with, the most rounded design, research, and everything else. Now we were working with global corps, the corporations that are household names. And the fascinating thing about these guys, where they had tried to do the ventures in-house, they had tried the big consultancy, they tried the boutique consultancy, they tried in-house again, and then they called us. We were the fifth person they called, after they'd spent 3-4 years trying to do it. And we got really well, and there's a lot of successes in there, but the pinch point for them came when we went to spin out and we went to do something really, really good. We got held to business as usual KPI. Suddenly that person was really shiny and new, important for the old business because they were doing something shiny over there. Suddenly there was a KPI that was meaningless to this spin out, that was meaningful to BAU. And again, that happened. So those are the large arcs in my career of the last 15 years of large vision. During the time, I was also a software engineer and doing lots of other random bits and pieces. I also went back to academia. Thought maybe second time around it might be better. Nope. 6 months bun fight over IP and how we spin it out. I also got approached to create a venture studio by VC in recent times. And the deal was me and the founders of all these ideas that we were putting through. In the small print, thank you for Tunes for checking over the small print, but in the small print, it said that the founders had no control, had no say, and ultimately could be booted out at any time or anything like that. So the idea is read the small print and use lawyers. But again, that wasn't going to work for anybody. And I've been at lots of startups where the CEO was basically a magpie. And whatever shiny thing comes along, hey, let's look at this. Doesn't matter that we're 90% completing this. Have a look over here. So these basically are the pinch points in my venture career that sort of where it started to fall down, where it started to fail. So that's kind of what the talk is based on, sort of, if we know this, if we can learn from my experiences and none of you have to do these, where do we go next? So that's the question. What's next? I'm going to set the caveat. I'm a nerd, software engineer. My entire career has been in software. So what's next for me? Let's just say software. Not a chance. It's in physical. The idea is that the future is physical. It's in manufacturing. It's in physical products. Technology is no longer center stage. And I say that, and chartered engineers are probably going to take away my engineering credentials for saying that. But the idea is it's not about software anymore. Technology is the enabler, and I want to be in the space where it's the enabler and not the center stage. And my prediction for what's going to be big next, which you can hold me to in 5 years when it's correct or incorrect, is it's going to be this blend of physical manufacturing and technology. And it's going to play into the circular economy. Because the idea is if we're going to survive, and survive well as a human race and together, we need to be considering these kind of things, and that's rooted in physical. So that's where I want to head, and that's where I am heading right now. So if we're to take where I want to go and where I think is going to be the next big ticket, how can we learn from the past? You know, what would I do differently? Well, actually, nothing changes in this front. This is actually my battle cry. Forget the headcount or anything like this. I want to build the right things as a ventures company. I want to ensure that they're built right by having brilliant engineers, whether that be mechanical, industrial, or software. And we're going to do it at the right pace. And we all know that there's only one pace, and that is fast in our world, because that's what we're geared up to do. So that has not changed. There's nothing going to deviate from that at all. But venturing 2.0 in my world is that this is often done at the side of a successful company. So you're either going to be a startup all on your own, like I've done many times, or at the side of a company. And if you're at the side of a company, you need to be sitting genuinely at the side, completely outside, to be able to move at pace with diligence. The ventures arm is future-looking. It does not look at the behind. It doesn't care what came behind it. It looks forward. It filters, evaluates, and it creates new things. And I'm going to say it creates new things from the noise, because there's a lot out there. There's a lot of noise in the world. There's a lot of noise from the business. The idea of that is kind of deafening at the most of the time. So how do we filter all that crud out and actually go for the right things? Core business will continue. I know it's there. It's behind me. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be on its rocket ship too. And it has to carry on to allow me to be able to do this well. So that's the kind of thing. Venturing 2.0, if we're going to learn, and I think this is kind of how I would pitch it. And the founding principles are this. I'd be remiss if I didn't say the word innovation. It's what we live and die on. Innovation is what drives new business. I'm going to say something controversial. It's a given, but it's actually the least important thing. We can all be innovative, and it's actually not the thing that I actually find interesting anymore. Creativity is the thing. Creativity, I think, sometimes can't be taught. It can be nurtured. Creativity is the thing that's going to drive that kind of global, scalable, sustainable businesses that we're talking about. It's not the boom and bust. It's the things that are going to be here for a lifetime. It's the thing that's going to evolve over the next 25, 50, 100 years. And then autonomy. For the ventures to exist well, you need that autonomy. It needs to sit outside. It needs to have the freedom. It needs to be a bit different or not fit the mold, and that's how it happens. So if I was to rate those, innovation, it's a given. We all do it now. It's taught at schools. It's a buzzword. We need to include it there for posterity. Creativity and autonomy are the things, and I'm going to focus on autonomy. Because if you look at my timeline and you look at all those feelings, every single one of those pinch points was failure to have genuine autonomy. We had loss of control. Didn't have the autonomy to actually focus on what you do. You were tied to a solution. You're held to some random BAU KPI that means nothing to anybody. The CEO was just all over the place, or you were being controlled. So autonomy is vital. And that's the whole pitch here of why ventures has been failing repeatedly from companies, and even in startups when they take investments and they lose control. The people who are making it, the people who live and breathe what they're doing, are the people who should be in control and have the autonomy to go forward and do that. How this works. So if anyone's a software engineer, I have stolen our term. Our term is, don't call us, we'll call you in software. And what that means, when your venture sits on the outside, it gets to live its life. It gets to do its thing. It knows business as usual is there, so when it has an issue, it can tap you up and say, hey, how's it going? And that's fine. But you don't expect incoming. Problem is, I can create as many funny memes as I like. I can do an interpretive dance. I can explain it. I can rap it. No one's going to listen to me. My door's going to be knocked every day. That's what happens. And that's been a lot of the big companies trying to spin out. That's what happens. Business as usual. The regular work comes a knocking. So when that happens, you need to have another principle, another plan. And I call it the Belfast to Derry rule. I've used this quite a few times in teams. So imagine when someone comes knocking that I have to down tools. I'm in Belfast, obviously. I have to down tools. I have to drive to Derry. I'm not allowed to take any calls. I do no business. I take whatever the request it is to do, I do it, and then I have to drive back again. So what will happen is your 3 30-minute innocent requests, look over this strategy, can you vet this person, can we have a wee chat there, can you check that? 3 of those per week, me or my team or someone who's on this kind of team will lose 1.5 days worth of work. That's a lot of work. And the reason that they lose work is context switching. If you're in ventures or you're in a high-performing, talent-dense team, You need thought process. You need a thing called flow. You are brilliant at what you do, but you need to kind of hone that state. And everyone thinks I joke when I say I have a thinking couch. Most of my offices have had a thinking couch, and I lie on it for about an hour a day, ponder life, the world, whatever it is, and whatever I'm going to execute next. And it's to get me into that flow state. So your random questions and everything else will take your team out of that. So this is very specific. So it's not just ventures team. If you have a really high value team that has to do really deep thought, needs to get into this flow state, consider the Belfast to Derry rule or whatever is localized in your world. So that's the kind of idea. So Hollywood principle doesn't work. Consider the Belfast to Derry rule. So if you assume that we have autonomy, and there's a few other tips and tricks you can do to generally get it, but let's just assume we have it. What do we do next? Excuse me, sorry. We build a team. So if I'm looking at the physical and both the digital world, these are the kind of names and things that we need to do that pops up. Suddenly, I'm looking at 25 people. That's not really small. That doesn't seem nimble to me. I'm hitting about 25 people. Experience from my world dictates that, I need some management overhead. Maybe we'll put some people managers in. We'll put some infrastructure. We need some admin. I'm suddenly knocking the door of 50 because the hiring world's mad out there, and that I need to hire just in case we lose people. I need to hire speculatively. I need to put more infrastructure in. And then suddenly, that escalated quickly, and I'm back to being if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. One team, one dream. And I'm back to where I started, of having to have a massive headcount company. And that's what I don't want to do. So let's try not to do that. What do? We go back to when I was a bootstrapping startup. And the thing that really, really drove it well was the power of experts. I didn't have a team of 5. Back then, I had a roster of about 12 experts that I relied on. I was able to get that instead of a team of 5. And it was flexible. I had them when I needed them. It was quality guaranteed. They were professors, they were doctors, they were top of their game. They'd been around for a while. They knew exactly what I needed at that point. And they're low maintenance. Generally find when people become experts in their field and they do what they want, they kind of just maintain themselves. It's kind of like that cactus plant. You don't need to worry about it. It's going to be fine. So we take the power of experts and we look at that as our alternative to growing this massive team. So let's have a look. If I was to do this in the world of the physical, in my tech world, it would probably be me, maybe an executive assistant, and then the team of experts. But since we're in the physical world, I need a physical lead. So I'll have a digital lead. My thoughts are a team of 2 to 5 is needed. What you might get some people who are able to do multiple things. So I'm old enough to have had a lot of experience that I can both do digital software, the business viability, and the ventures. So you maybe don't have to hire somebody to do that. If we hire a physical lead that can cover everything from mechanical, industrial, and electrical, and able to lead teams to do that, then we've got that covered. So we have these leads, and that becomes our core team. And then we have the experts. We have the freelancers. We have the people who just love doing and being good at what they do and bouncing around and learn from lots of teams. We then have the consultancies. But we go with the boutique agencies. We go with the people who you'll see out there, the white space. If I ever need software, I'm going to white space. They are amazing at what they do. I look at the pale blue dots, the groundswells, all these brilliant local companies that maybe have anywhere between 5 and 30 people. These small, amazing teams who do things really well, I contract them in to help me along that way. And we look at physical design agencies as well. The other thing we actually do is actually bring in our own legal, sometimes our own HR and advice around strategy, because if you're tied to a big machine, the legal advice and all the things that happen might not be relevant. You might not have the accountants that know about R&D tax credits or patents or anything like that already. You actually probably need to bring that in at the same time. So bring in the experts. That's kind of like my working hypothesis. A couple of key people and then bring in the experts. Access to more minds for less. I can have a team of 2 and a roster of 50+ experts. Candidly, that's going to cost me less than 7 full-time employees. Do the math. That's clearly a way forward for what we're doing here. Purposely small teams. My hypothesis that I'm trying to live right now through various things in the last years is go fast and far together. All these expert teams get to live their life, do really well what they do, and when we come together when we need to. Why is this model better? Well, the finances, for sure. That's actually probably the least reason for doing this. Time. when I was in small teams and even managed a team of like 7, 8, 9 people, half my week was just making sure that their hopes and dreams were met and the team was okay and nudging everyone forward. That takes a lot of time. You want your leaders to actually execute. You don't want your leaders to be spending time doing all the things to make the team better. Headspace. Anytime, any moment, day or night, you could be contacted by the team. That kind of flow state, you're taking people out of the flow state because they're so busy being about the team. Flexibility. The kind of world I'm in, I might need an iPhone developer for 3 months, but I might have an iPhone developer for life. What do? So I either make that iPhone developer do Android or web or something else that they don't want to do. With experts, I can be flexible and be like, actually, I need a front-end dev at that time. So you get to use experts at the right time, and it's the right people for the job. We don't just hire speculatively. We might need an iPhone at some point. Let's hire a team. Let's have them sitting there ready to go. Quality. We also have quality. We get that guaranteed quality because you're hiring people at the peak of their game. They've already risen up there. You're getting independent validation. You're getting people who come from other teams, so you're not going to just think like the same group of people who hang around together all the time. We get that validation. And then you focus on the value, and it's not about the team admin, because I think a lot of big teams end up with team admin. Your life goal is to keep this team at a certain head count and keep it going and keep it happy and keep it ticking over. This becomes about value. So this is why I think this model is better. Does it scale? That's the problem. Like, this works when you're a team of 2 doing something small, but what happens if you have lots of ventures? So this is a very simplified process that we're using. There's lots of diligence behind the scenes in what we do. But the thing that you should care about is, assuming we have not killed off this idea, it's in the world, it's successful, it's selling, and it needs a team. What do? We have to hire the team. So we, the person who created it, the team, the small team that created it, are the people that hire the new team in behind them to take it on. The ventures team and the team that's sitting aside are not the team that delivers it. The existing business team is definitely not the team that delivers it. You have to hire the new skills. So that's what we do. We're also responsible. At the point of when we know this is going to be a success and we want to commit to it, we hire a team. But oh no, we're back in the headcount bloat. So if we keep doing this, we'll end up in a team of 100. So how do we avoid headcount bloat? And this is the thing that interests me, and I think my next talks will really focus on this because this is where my career is heading. How do we focus on talent density? Aim for excellence in craft. Aim for a well-rounded team of 8, 9, 10 that are genuinely brilliant. And how do we create that? And there's room for everybody in that team as long as they perform. That team might not exist. It might not exist at all if it doesn't perform. It's not about a bell curve. It's not about rating everybody against each other. It's about that team performing overall. It's ensuring that when that team exists and has to communicate with other teams, there's a way to do that you interface properly. It's not the old slap a project manager on it and make that work, because that's where companies fail. They'll put a project manager to manage communications that aren't working rather than actually fixing the problems. And the other thing is that we do mindful hiring. I like the idea that a team evolves as you add one individual at a time. So when you add one individual, what's the new vibe? How does that feel? What is currently missing? Maybe that person brings something more than you didn't realize, so the next person that you hire is a bit different. So this is where I think we can really grow teams, but without the headcount bloat. So in summary, say no to headcount vanity. Aim for talent density. That's going to be my battle cry for the future and future kind of talks, and that's where I think we're heading. But I kind of like to give a little bit of insight as well. I think a team of 2 and a roster of 50 experts is definitely greater than a team of 25 with 3 team leads and maybe just a few experts sprinkled in. So that's kind of how do we get access to the most brilliant minds and the most brilliant minds beyond Northern Ireland, UK, and sort of globally. Final thoughts. I like to comment on sort of the future of work and sort of like helpful tips and where I think this is going. And just to sort of point out that I'm not saying small is better. I'm actually saying that they both, large and small, have pros and cons. And what's actually a pro of a small company and a small team is actually a con in other sense, and it depends. So what this really says, if you can't read it, that in a large company, there is a pathway, there's a career pathway, there's training schemes, there's everything that you can sort of follow. The path is well established, and if you need that and want that, that's good. In a smaller team, you do have flexibility, but you have to shape the path, and maybe that's right for you. In a bigger team, you have lots of work colleagues. In a smaller team, you have fewer. There's a time of my life where I wanted lots of work colleagues, and there's a time of my life that I'm not sure I can maintain 100 work colleagues at all. So final thoughts are, it's a personal choice. It's what works for you. You're actually in control. It's a hiring world. So the idea is actually people want you. You'll probably get many job offers. What was once a positive might not be a positive anymore for you. So always check in with yourself. If you're a leader and you're in a position like me, think what you want. As a leader, I still want to execute. I don't want my life to be about checking out LinkedIn and trying to hire, but maybe that's for you. Is there a balance? I do kind of want to nurture a team as well, but I just don't want all the overhead of having to maintain a huge team. Final thoughts about career. I'm big into look after your career because your company won't and no one else will. I'm a big fan of hopping around. Your knowledge will be limited if you're always working with the same people. If you're working with the people you went to uni with or the same team, or even if it's a different company, hop around. The best thing I have done is to actually be in lots of different teams. And I see some there right now today. And I owe my career and where I am to some of the people sitting in this that I've worked with in other teams or have led me. Try different shapes and sizes of companies as well. Don't just go for small. I went to a big consultancy for a reason, and I probably learned the most, as much in a big consultancy as I did as a solo founder. Also consider working in a small agency. In the tech world, we're kind of seduced by the big FDI, big company coming to Northern Ireland, having 200 people, 2,000 people. Consider being in a smaller team of 15, 20. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot you can hone your skills in that sense. And remember that your life changes. Check in that the role works for you every so often, at least once a year, maybe multiple times a year. And avoid vanity KPIs. Invest in what makes you happy. Disclaimer within that, probably too small to read. Vanity KPIs are probably what your company works on. So make sure you tick enough to get your bonus, but they're probably not going to be invested in the KPIs that make you happy. So make sure you still maintain your own KPIs. Purposely small teams, go fast and far together. I love talking about team. I love talking about high performance, talent density, future of work, ventures. That's my Twitter. I like oat milk flat whites if anyone wants to have a coffee and ever chat about this anymore. So thank you.
Dr. Rachel Gawley, stay there. If you like chatting about it, we've got a couple of questions. First of all, this may be the best Twitter handle you'll see on this stage today. Quickly tell us, where did @DeadlyToes come from?
Theory was I was so good at coding, I could code with my feet, my toes.
Excellent. I like it. I like it. So as someone who works consultancy side and worked agency side, I found it really interesting what you said about having in-house experts and then relying on those. Does it ever cause you scheduling issues? You know, you think of, well, I'm working on X, Y, and Z project, you call, you need something now. And how do you manage that?
I think that kind of works on a lot of like radical transparency. So I'm just radically transparent, probably too much so, because I will tell you how it is, and that kind of trust. So I think you have to be aware, and you have to realize you're scheduling. And I'm not one to be like, oh, it needs to be done now. If we need to wait 2 weeks to get the right people or the right position, I will wait. Because I think that's the kind of thing that goes wrong about pace. People assume you have to be executing all the time, it has to maintain it. Sometimes kind of on a thinking couch for a week's not going to kill anybody.
I love the thinking couch as well. There was one of the US president's advisors used to have an hour a day where he shut the door, no meetings, and he'd just stare out of the window and he said, 100%. That's how I work out what we're going to do next.
That's
exactly a really important point to stop, isn't it? Because we seem to be in a world where go, go, go is seen as being great as opposed to stop and think and get the right answer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it. So there's like a book from the 70s or something about the benefits of walking, and actually a lot of the great thinkers like just walked mindlessly as well for no thing. So I've discovered a lot of BT9 during lockdown, but just thinking and wandering around. So I'm a big advocate of that.
If it's good enough for Hemingway, it's good enough for me too.
100%.
We heard in the last presentation that change can be difficult for people, and change can feel uncomfortable when you're going through that. Some of the things you've talked about today could maybe be quite difficult changes, especially for managers, middle managers in particular, who have a lot of their self wrapped up in the management of the team. How or what recommendations or advice could you give to people like that who are thinking, we know there's a better way, but it feels really difficult to them to move?
I think that's, if I had that solution for that, I'd probably be a rich person. But realistically, that is difficult. And I often come in as the slightly obnoxious change person. So I sometimes get the rage. Bring it at me, I can do it. But I think it is kind of working on yourself. It's like kind of figuring out there's a better way. Just don't rage against me or the machine or something else. Try and work on yourself. Try and figure out. Be candid with the people that you're working with and say, look, I aspire to do it differently. Can you help me? You know, there's lots of coaches out there. I'm a big fan of executive coaching for that.
I also love the use of the word candid rather than honest, because when you say to people, be honest, there's almost a psychological bit of, are you suggesting that I'm usually dishonest? But if you ask for people to be candid, they give you honest feedback, which is brilliant.
I think so. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, the slightly obnoxious Dr. Rachel Gawley. That was her words, not mine, by the way. Rachel Gawley, thank you.
Thank you.